I'd like to start with a land acknowledgement, as Creating Roots is physically located in Toronto. Creating Roots would like to acknowledge that we are situated on the territory of the Anishinaabe, Mississaugas of the New Credit, and Haudenosaunee peoples. As an uninvited guest on this land, I am grateful for the opportunity to live and work here, and am committed to being in solidarity with all Indigenous nations for their rights, freedoms, and fight for land and water protection. Creating Roots was incorporated as a federal nonprofit in January of 2020, realizing a dream that began 20 years ago when I was a teenager. The idea is that if you give a young person a financial education and resources, it will lead to financial stability. If you give them a safe place to call home and tons of support, they can begin the next phase of their lives with confidence and the ability to truly focus on creating the future of their dreams instead of trying just to survive. Most of these young people are graduating from foster care with not enough support, in sharp contrast to their peers who are living at home with their families. When Creating Roots works with a youth who is left or is leaving care, we work to establish a bond that helps them feel safe, respected, and heard, something they're not necessarily accustomed to. When I was born, it was in the 80s. I was 3 months early, 2 pounds and 4 ounces, and I spent those first 3 months in an incubator. Reports show that my mom was clean from drugs, which is shocking considering she died of an accidental drug overdose at 53. Giving birth to me, she was 26 and mentally ill. The amount of stress that illness caused her, I believe, caused me to be born early, as soon as I could survive outside on my own. At the time, she had just come back from Alberta, where the jobs were, but instead of a job, she made me, and when she came back to Toronto, she went back to her mom and dad, and they took her in. There was a time when they didn't take her in, back in 1979, when she was 14. She'd skipped a grade and was the usual talking back, experimenting teenager. Except she experimented a little early and became pregnant with my half-sister. And this did not go over well with my grandparents. My grandfather lost his mind. My grandmother was severely disappointed, and they did what everyone was doing in those days. They sent youth to maternity homes until the babies were born. To the neighborhood, she was visiting a relative, but she came back pudgy, sullen, and depressed. And then 13 years later, here she is living at mom and dad's, pregnant with me. I imagine they felt some guilt for sending her away and didn't want to do it again, and knew that if she didn't have a place to live, then I wouldn't be released from foster care. After my grandfather passed away, a journal I found written by him in the tiniest handwriting possible. He wrote the comings and goings of my mother for the months following my release from Sick Kids Hospital. It was very telling that my mom was suffering a great deal of PTSD for related and unrelated tragedies she had experienced. I can see that now. But all you could see then was a beautiful girl with cold, fiery eyes. You'd also see her increasing drug addiction and unbreakable codependent tendencies. You'd see the neglect for herself as well as for me. She had a tortured relationship. She grappled with being a mother. I mean, I'm glad that I'm alive, but I don't think my mom was made for parenting. I think she was one of those people that were born to not have babies because they have other callings in life that aren't conducive to parenthood, and that's okay. She was smart. She just used it in the wrong ways. She used it to outsmart her doctors for Valium and Children's Aid to get me back, and anyone else that was naive enough to fall for her delusions. I bounced back and forth from foster care for a few years after that, and she had another baby, and that baby was born with a disability and was given up for adoption. I still don't know where my baby half-sister, Vanessa, is to this day. When I was 12, my mother kicked me out. It was 3 a.m, and all I had on was a t-shirt. She had been talking to herself all week and acting particularly strange. I didn't know what to do, so I ran to a friend's house with bare feet. I slept in the yard on a bench because I did not want to disturb my friend's family. But it got colder and colder, and I got more and more scared that somehow she had followed me, and she was going to come raging out from the bushes and haul me away. I didn't want her to find me. I was relieved and heartbroken that she'd given up on me. 6 months after that, CAS sent me back home because she convinced them that our one-bedroom apartment was appropriate. The only way to get to the bathroom was through my bedroom, and my mother slept in the living room. A year and a half after that, I'm now 13 and deathbed sick with the chickenpox. I rarely left bed. I needed to be fed and given liquids and checked regularly. And I barely saw my mother for 3 weeks. I took care of myself. She did become concerned and took me to Sick Kids Hospital because the pox were in my throat. But we were essentially told to just go home and chill. And timing had it that I only missed the last 2 weeks of school, but I was allowed to attend my grade 8 graduation. I had no dress prepared, no shoes, and my mother didn't show up to the ceremony. My grandparents were there, and I won the Kiwanis Citizenship Award for being a good person. And just 3 days later, my mom dropped off a bag of my stuff, to where I was sleeping over with a letter. And this letter, she believed, gave up legal custody of me because she couldn't handle me anymore. Within weeks, I was begging a children's lawyer to fight to make sure I would never have to go back to her ever again. I wanted to start living. I knew I would never make it under her care. I started high school living in foster care. I left of my own accord when I was 16 and graduated high school just 2 months after my 18th birthday. I am grateful, and I was fortunate to have all the supports I needed to graduate high school and complete a college diploma despite experiencing foster care. I graduated with honors in child and youth work, and then I had 2 kids. When my kids got a little bit older, I decided that my experience of moving at least 15 times in 15 years previously would go a long way to me becoming a fantastic realtor. So as soon as I seriously considered the profession, I knew that helping others obtain housing was something that spoke very dearly to me because I had never had a constant home growing up. So I share the thrill of finding a place with my clients. And then I found myself divorced with 2 kids under 7. So although I was super excited to begin my career, I was laser focused on making sure that my kids came through the other side as complete and untraumatized as possible. As time went on, my kids settled into their new reality and I didn't need as much support. So once I knew they were going to be okay, it was time for me to come to face with the new reality we had found ourselves in. I had focused so intently on making sure that my kids were okay that I had neglected my own needs. But when it was clear that they were going to be okay, I fell to pieces. It took a few years, but I picked myself up and started to plan for the future in 2018. I had my realtor's license, and then I obtained my financial services license. My kids were older, settled, well-adjusted. It was time to jumpstart my career. But something was missing. Even though I was in the position of helping people find homes, the people I was working with weren't the ones that needed my help the most. I don't recall the exact day, but I remember the feeling. I Googled youth homelessness and then foster youth homelessness, and I was devastated by what I found. I was deeply shocked that 20 years after I left care, so many youth were still experiencing homelessness. I went to work immediately, and ever since then, the need to develop, implement, and become part of the solution has been a driving force behind every single day. I went to work. I recognized that in order to have the greatest impact and farthest reach, I needed to start by establishing a nonprofit organization. And then I discovered I would need to establish a board of directors, and I knew exactly who to bring in. The folks that were instrumental in my own transitional years were my last social worker, my last foster mother, and for more support, my last foster sister. So we've banded together with the mission of bridging the gap between leaving care and adulthood in a way that's lasting and will have a deep impact in reducing youth homelessness. So, what is the solution for reducing or eliminating youth homelessness? Well, there is no one solution. There are many contributing factors that go into it. I recognized that a lack of actual physical shelter was the greatest threat to youth leaving care, and I wanted to do something about it. At the time, the tiny home craze was hitting mainstream consciousness. It seemed like the perfect solution. So when Creating Roots was incorporated in 2019, our goal was to build a tiny home village for youth leaving the foster care system. This was it. We were going to lead the charge and make this dream a reality. We just needed to prove that a tiny home could be built affordably. The homes were planned to be placed in volunteer backyards. So in 2019, we partnered with a tiny home manufacturer to design and build a prototype. We called it the Nest. It was originally going to have a loft bed, but unfortunately, the design made the unit too high to safely transport on the roads. So the designer redid the plans, and we came up with a great solution for the limitations we had. So without further ado, I will give you the Nest.
Hey everyone, in this video we're taking a look at a beautiful minimalist tiny house that's just 23 feet long by 10 feet wide. At 230 square feet, it was designed for 1 to 2 people to live in. And what's really unique about this tiny house is that it can easily be attached and detached from a trailer, which offers several advantages over a traditional tiny house on wheels. In this video, we're going to meet up with Daniel from True North Tiny Homes, who's going to give us a full tour, and he's also going to talk about the benefits of building it separate from a trailer. So let's go check it out.
We started with the height of our trailer and then made the far point of our soffit be at the 13'6" for road legal, and then just at a 112 slope to wherever we ended up in the bathroom. So this is the Nest, and it is 10 by 23 on the outside, making it 230 square feet. We started with a door at the end just to do something a little bit different. It does necessitate a hallway all the way through the home, so it does kind of cut things up a little bit, but we did the best we could with that, and it created this really cool front porch. The kitchen is actually 10 feet long with as few cabinets as possible, because the less cabinets, the more cost effective it is. So we have two 36-inch banks of drawers to get as much kitchen drawer space as possible, and it just creates a really nice space flanking the sink. We went with black windows, so we countered that with the black sink and faucet, the same thing in the bathroom, and it just gives this really nice detail against it. So turning around here, looking back at the door, this is where our appliances are supposed to go. They're not all in yet. We have the microwave. It's also a convection oven microwave, so that you can get both out of it without taking up oven space. There's supposed to be a 2-burner cooktop cut into here, but we don't have that yet, so we don't know what size to cut the hole. But some people have looked at this and said, well, why don't we just use a hot plate that we can just plug in? And then the fridge is supposed to go here. We have huge closet space in this one, maybe a little bigger than we would have needed, but it does give you huge storage capabilities here. The amount of storage in here is just incredible, especially for only 1 or 2 people. A cool thing to note though is that we do have the HRV unit up at the top of this closet, taking up some room. The HRV unit is great for exchanging inside air with outside air. Now, I'm the type of guy who's just going to open all the windows anyways and exchange it that way, but if you do keep it all closed, and especially in the winter time as well, because we don't have air movement with the in-floor heating here, that does give us a lot of fresh air. The other thing is, it's one of the necessities to meet the Ontario Building Code to make this legal. The desk is probably bigger than it needs to be as well, but this is just the amount of space that was left between the kitchen and the bathroom, so it just made sense to just put a countertop in right across. We've pre-drilled holes for your computer to be able to plug in underneath, and then the space didn't look quite right until we went to a 50-inch TV. I know it's probably bigger than most tiny homes, but I love it. And you could totally turn this into a dining space as well with a couple more chairs across here. So this is the living room, but it's also the bedroom because we don't have a bedroom in here. This house was designed for 1 person to live comfortably, but it's very easy to pull this couch into a queen-size bed so that 2 can stay here. The couch is quite generously sized, but it's because it's a bed sideways. So it's as easy as it gets. We just pull the bed forward, the back side of the couch actually folds down for the other half of the mattress, and now we've got a queen size mattress here. And before that flips down, that's where all the storage for all the bedding is. So you do have to make your bed every day, but you gain the ability of having a smaller house to live with and clean up. So we like to use as big windows as possible because that's what makes a tiny home feel bigger. And we love using these awning windows. To prove a point, I left this open all weekend, and we had torrential downpours this weekend, just to prove a point that rain does not come in the house when you leave your windows open, so you don't need to shut them. We do have the ceiling fan in here because we don't have air conditioning. Although with the heat wave we've been having lately, I've thought some people might not be comfortable with just a fan. So there is the ability to add a ductless mini split on top of the TV and put air conditioning in here, of course. Another cool thing to note in the living room here is this awesome barn door that we did out of the same shoshugibon that we have on the outside siding, just to kind of bring that inside. And strategically, it hides our electrical panel. Welcome to our massive bathroom. Now, the thing about the Ontario Building Code is that the space for the main living area has to be 13.5 square meters. But then they just say, and you need a bathroom. So because in order to get that space, we went with a 10-foot width, this is just how much room we needed to get a vanity and a toilet beside each other. So you end up with this massive space. This tiny home is connected to the services everywhere. So this is just a regular toilet that connects to a regular sewer. And we've got regular water service coming in and just a 24-inch vanity to finish that side off. We love to do a really fancy shower always. So in here we have hexagonal black tiles in the back. Again, some of that black accents going on and with the shower there. Another thing to note is the exit to the HRV, which is right in the shower, so it's also pulling all the humidity out of the most humid spot of the house to kind of clean up the air in here. We always like to have the biggest window possible in a bathroom. I mean, obviously not as big as in the living room, but as big of a window as possible to get some airflow. In here is the mechanical room. We have our combination washer dryer at the bottom, and then the only thing that basically fits on top here is our boiler system. And this boiler runs the in-floor heating as well as the hot water out of your faucets. So we've decided to switch our main heating source on our units to be in-floor hydronic heating. And the reasoning being some of the first ones that we built, especially the ones that are on trailers, it gets pretty cold in the wintertime on the floor. So even though the ductless mini split that are on the walls are making the ambient air temperature seem fine, your feet are still cold because the heat never falls far enough to actually warm the floor up. So just because of the Canadian winters, we've just switched to doing this, and it warms from the bottom up. The other great benefit of it is it also warms everything that's touching the floor. So your furniture and your cabinets also get warm, so it maintains the heat in the building a lot better. One of the downsides though is even though this one is being connected 100% to the grid, and you think, well, then we might as well just run everything off of electric. Electric water heaters do not run hot enough to kill certain bacteria. Now, normally that's not a problem because you're just heating water that is coming out of your tap and it doesn't have time for the bacteria to grow. But because the hydronic heating is a closed loop, that same liquid is in there for years on end, and so the bacteria starts to grow. So the only way we can kill that is by going to a propane boiler that heats that bacteria up hot enough. And so for that reason, we have propane in this home specifically only for the boiler. This house is not on a trailer. It goes on a trailer to transport it to site, and then we jack the house up, drive our trailer out, and put the house down on a foundation. It does a few things. One is that it's actually illegal to live in a vehicle in Ontario, and a vehicle is anything with wheels. Another cool factor about not building on a trailer is that we don't have wheel wells to build around. And so this enables us to just build a square box, and it's a whole lot easier. Another advantage is that the weakest point of the longevity of a tiny home is the trailer. Most trailers are built out of steel, and that's going to start to rust out being that close to the ground all the time, or if you're moving it all the time, that's going to rust out faster than all of the rest of the building materials. So we use a helical pier system, and we drill 6 piers in the ground for this particular model, and then we place the house right down on those 6 piers, and those are permanent. Now, an additional neat thing about that is it only costs us about $2,500 to put those 6 piers in, but it costs us at least $7,500 to build a trailer. So it's actually cheaper to just reuse our trailer over and over again and put them on foundations. We had a steel bracket engineered by our engineer, and the part that you don't see is actually a lot bigger, and it bolts onto the beams that we've created the platform of the house with, and has big bolts in it holding everything together. And the outside of that, the nice finished black part that we see, we can hook 4 regular stabilizer jacks on. Only we like to use the 5,000-pound hand crank jacks that you would see on the tongue of a regular trailer. And with 4 people, we can simultaneously jack the house all the way up. And we bring it about 3 feet off the ground to drive our trailer out, and then bring it right down to where we are now, which is about 6 inches above the ground. On that same steel bracket system, we also put big D-rings. And so when it's on the trailer, that's what we're using to strap it down without having to put a strap all the way around the whole house. We might put one of those on as well, just to meet the number of pounds of strapping that we need, but that's not what's holding on the trailer. So we created this as a prototype for a new not-for-profit called Creating Roots for Former Foster Youth. About 50% of foster youth, when they turn 18 and age out of the program, become homeless. So the idea behind the not-for-profit is to create some homes in tiny homes for some of those foster youth to be able to have a home to live in. One of the key guidelines that we try to follow when we're designing tiny homes is that we want to be able to build it in a way that you don't have to move stuff to get to other stuff, but still have this feeling of openness and freedom. And it's light and it's airy, and this is a triadic color scheme and was specifically designed to have a calming effect on people so that when they come in they feel safe and they feel secure and can de-stress after a day of work.
Charlene, you're muted.
Thank you. So isn't it pretty cool, huh? We were over the moon with the simplicity of the design, and I was so excited to get the house finished. We were scheduled to unveil the nest as part of a tiny village in Canada Blooms at the CNE. We were beyond thrilled that we could finally create and share our vision with the rest of the world, and the home was built. Then COVID happened. The show was canceled hours before its debut, and the nest was returned to the builder, who ended up buying it back. This was a deeply personal loss for me. I had invested my own private funds into this venture, and the financial hit was great. But it was not as great as seeing my dream crushed by the weight of a world that had shut down. So I bet you're curious about how much the tiny house cost. Well, $93,000. We worked with the builder to come up with a less expensive version of the nest, and we were able to get the cost down to $13,000 to $80,000. That was quite the accomplishment. However, there are some other costs that go along with having a tiny home. Transporting and setting it up on site where the youth would be living. We also discovered that the building in Ontario is challenging due to strict regulations that seem to always continue to drive the price up. Building to code, which does not include shipping containers. Transporting, setting up, and connecting to the grid is extremely expensive and requires a significant amount of challenging documentation. However, there are people in the industry currently reviewing the concept and trying to make it easier to build and place a tiny home in Ontario. So as you can imagine, adjusting to life in the middle of a pandemic was challenging, as I'm sure it was for all of you. I felt pretty defeated for a time. I didn't know how I was going to move forward with my dream of helping youth find a safe place to call home. And I realized that I would have to redevelop Creating Roots to become something that could work now. We had to stay within our mandate of providing housing and other necessities to youth who were in and from foster care. And at the same time, the landscape of the child welfare system in Ontario is changing, and we need to ensure that we're equipped to adjust as the proposed changes become reality. Have you heard of the term the ethical reset? So this term has come from the Ontario Children's Advancement Coalition and is a concept that I'm excited to share with you. The ethical reset is based on the premise that youth should only leave foster care when they are ready, not arbitrarily shown the door at a specific age. It focuses on various readiness factors and is based on the individual youth and not a set date on a calendar. It provides the youth with support that they need to successfully leave foster care. This is in the works, and we will expect framework in the next year to year and a half. So as we redeveloped Creating Roots, we recognized that despite housing being available, youth were still unable to access it and were still ending up homeless. There has been a moratorium on youth leaving care, which means that youth will not be allowed to leave care until 2022 September. It means that they can leave care if they want to, but they don't have to leave their foster homes. So in September of 2022, there's going to be an unprecedented number of youth who are leaving foster care. And I realized that my greatest asset, being a realtor, positioned me to be able to meaningfully help youth to find a safe place to call home. Knowing what landlords are looking for in potential tenants, I decided to reverse engineer the process of finding a home, and I broke it down into simple, easy to understand terms. You may or may not know this, but the process of finding a place to rent has changed a great deal in the recent years. Gone are the days of responding to an ad and viewing a unit and agreeing on the spot with a handshake. The process is filled with various types of paperwork and offering proof of income, references as a tenant. And at Creating Roots, we'll take you through every single piece of paper. We help them understand it and how to complete it. We coach them on what documents they need and help them obtain them. For example, some documents we help youth get are their credit scores, letters of employment, proof of income for those on assistance, school acceptance letters, and so on. Our aim is to work with youth as young as 15 to help them prepare for leaving care. The reality is being truly prepared for leaving care takes years, not months, especially when the youth must save up for first and last month's rent. So I'd like to show you a video.
So, you're thinking about working with Creating Roots. I'm really glad you're here. Not only will you receive a comprehensive youth-created and presented financial education, you will also receive the services of a real estate agent, one-on-one for free. We will review employment goals, update your resume, and get you on the path to employment. We also review all contracts and make sure you know your rights and responsibilities as a tenant. It takes time, but we know what it takes to be the tenant that homeowners are looking for, and we want to show you the way. Let's work together to save you time and stress while securing you a safe and long-term place to thrive. For more information, please visit www.creatingrootscanada.ca. Because we believe that foster care should never end without a home.
Did you pick up on the piece about financial education? Okay, so the reality is that most youth will only have incomes of about $1,000 a month, which means we can only search for places to live that fall in the $350, $500 per month range. Ideally, you should only be spending 35% on your rent, but many end up paying much more, even as high as 50%. So in our program, youth learn about all aspects about their credit, mindful spending, taxes, savings, loans, and more, because we feel that financial literacy is vital to a young person's survival after leaving care. We've teamed up with another federal youth-led nonprofit organization called Penny Drops, who has generously given us permission to use their youth-presented financial literacy videos and system. We decided that we didn't want to just give youth a bunch of videos to watch on their own. and we recognize the concepts covered in the videos would have a greater impact if we presented them to the youth with a facilitator, such as myself or a person from Penny Drops. This allows them to ask questions in real time in a safe, respectful environment and provides one-on-one support to ensure they fully understand the information being shared and the impact it can have on their lives. In addition to the financial piece around securing a place to live, we recognize that there was a need to educate youth about expectations around landlord, tenant, and housemate relationships. So in this summer, I am training with the Rent Smart Education and Support Society, whose mission is to provide extensive housing and life skills. One does not become an ideal tenant by chance. It is something that must be learned. And this program, offered with videos and a trainer, covers topics like how to be a good neighbor, how to spot a scam, laws and guarantors, and so much more. So upon my training, I will be able to be certified, which will allow me to educate youth, train social workers and counselors to do what I do, and each youth that attends the training receives a certificate that they can show to a potential landlord to demonstrate their commitment to being a good tenant. You may be wondering to yourself at this point, and I hope you are, how can I help to reduce foster youth homelessness? What can I personally do to make a difference? And the good news is there are many ways that people can make a difference. First and most importantly, we need you to advocate for youth with your neighbors, friends, relatives, and extended community to rent space in their income property to a youth transitioning from care so that they can have a safe place to grow and thrive. Many people who want to help these youth don't consider that this could be the greatest tool in helping youth secure a home. If people aren't willing to consider renting to a young person, then accessing housing for them becomes nearly impossible. So here are some other important ways you can help. If you're a worker, you can set up your youth with Creating Roots by doing a quick 1-minute intake on our website. If you're a homeowner with a basement or extra room, a bright basement, reach out to us and we will work with you to secure a tenant that's gone through our program. If you're a realtor, consider reaching out to connect with us for pre-qualified leads in your area to find these youth homes. And after this call, you can educate yourself on your own credit. Find out your credit score. Did you know that if you use more than 35% of your credit limit, it hurts your credit score? It's true. If you got value out of this presentation, also consider donating to the cause. So you hopefully are also wondering, how early should we start these interventions? We believe that it should happen as early as possible. We will work with youth as young as 15 so that when their time comes to move out, they've had plenty of time to prepare. And having said that, we will work with youth of all ages up to the age of 30 to help prepare them for transition. If you know of any youth needing support, please connect them with us sooner rather than later to help them give the best start possible. So the cost for guiding these youth pales in comparison to how much it costs on average to service each person in the homeless population. $53,144 per person per year. For 50 youth, that could cost the government just over $2.6 million. And I can assure you wholeheartedly that creating roots for 50 youth does not cost $2.6 million. In order to create roots for these youth, instead of paying $53,000 on average for one person homeless, all we need to do to get started to provide everything that I've talked about, from employment support to education, rights and credit, and all the rest, is $2,100, not $53,000. And that's a one-time payment. If you want to be generous and also give these youth a huge leg up with last month's rent, then add on another $900 on average, totaling as little as $3,000 to create roots for youth in care, crush the statistics, and prepare these youth for housing like they have never been prepared before. When you look at the numbers, it becomes clear very quickly about how much our program can help save taxpayers millions of dollars per year and keep young people off the street. There is no lose here. When youth leaving foster care get the support they need and they are safe, they can make the best choices for them in their future and for their children. Instead of just trying to survive, they can break the cycles of poverty, addiction, and social service interventions. Together, we have the power to change the trajectories of so many lives. We can impact futures of not just these youth today, but their own children. We can significantly reduce long-term homelessness, addictions, and mental illness. Together, we can have a real impact on the future. Beginning in just March of this year, Creating Roots started working with clients to go through the housing process. We're currently working with about 24 youth of all ages in multiple locations around the province. We have saved 3 young people from eviction by providing monies we had raised. These 3 young people who now have a safe place to come home to are 3 young people that can focus on building their future instead of trying to survive today. For the rest of the youth we are working with, we're supporting them in addressing their needs to access affordable and safe housing. There are many barriers to finding a safe place to call home, and these include poor credit, insufficient income, affordability, lack of rental history, single parents, and the most heartbreaking, trying to overcome the stigma associated with being a young person. All these things take a great deal of time and support to overcome, and we're committed to personally working with each individual youth, addressing their specific challenges until they've secured a safe, affordable place to rent. I'm reminded of my dream of having tiny homes built by former foster youth for former foster youth. It's a dream that I hope will become one day a reality. However, I am excited where we are and that we've found a way forward that will allow us to offer tangible support to more youth more affordably right here today. So we've successfully revamped our mission to ensure that all youth working with us find safe places to call home. So knowing that we're making a difference for youth transitioning out of foster care makes my heart full. I remember how hard life was when I was a young person leaving care, and I realized what an incredible difference a support like Creating Roots would have been for me. I want to offer other youth leaving care because they are worthy, lovable, and enough. My most recent review reads, I am a worker supporting young people in and from foster care and have referred several of them to Charlene. She is always extremely responsive, warm, and helpful. She has a lot of knowledge and shares of herself in a way that is very empathetic, reassuring, and supportive to the young people I have connected with her. She is passionate and committed to helping these young people, and it shows. It has been a pleasure working with her, and I look forward to doing so for years to come. So as I wrap up, I would like you to know that we have a scholarship fund for sending former foster youth to Humber College to become real estate agents themselves. They can study anywhere in Ontario, and upon graduation, they can work anywhere in Ontario. Though there's no obligation on the part of the youth who's granted the scholarship to return to Creating Roots, it's our hope that they will be inspired to help and come back when they can. We have a dream that one day there will be a great network of former foster youth working as real estate agents, helping those that are in need. And if you'd like more information about the scholarship program, I'll place a link in the chat. So thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate you taking the time to hear my vision, and I really hope that we can all impact the lives of some of the most vulnerable people in our society, foster youth. It's my hope that in sharing my own personal journey of youth homelessness and the barriers of perpetuating it, that the desperate need is apparent, and perhaps you've identified a way in which you too can make a difference for youth transitioning out of foster care. You're invited to join us in June for a bingo karaoke fundraiser. We will be playing bingo and singing karaoke, which is optional, of course. I'm going to be snail mailing the bingo cards out June 10th. So make sure you click the link that I'll be putting in. And I also will be sending all of these links by email afterwards. You could win $100. And I hope you will all consider following us on LinkedIn and Facebook so you can see the impact that we're having in the community. And now it's time for questions. So if you would like to put your digital hand up, I can call upon you and you can unmute yourself and say anything you like. All right, does anybody have any questions or comments? Well, fantastic. So thank you so much for being here with me today. Please follow me on social media, consider donating, and most importantly, advocate for these youth any chance that you get because they need us. It takes a village. Thank you so much, everyone.